All right, folks, welcome back to the that's a cross between we're back and welcome back. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. We're joined right now by our friend, former Congressman, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. Hello, Congressman.
Hey, hi, Steve. I guess this time you can now see me, so it's good to be with you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, looking right at you. It's great to see you, and all the folks at Newsmax TV are seeing you as well. All right, so there's so much to talk about here. Why don't we start with where we started with Senator McCain a few minutes ago, and that is Fallujah, and such significance to Fallujah and all the men and women that we lost in those battles, especially the second battle, as the senator alluded to. And here, this is where Al-Qaeda picks to take a stand, to make a stand, to pick a battle, pick a fight, and now they're flying their flag around the city of Fallujah. It has got to be totally disheartening and a sick feeling in the pit of the stomach of every man and woman who served in Iraq during the time we were there.
Oh, absolutely. We've sacrificed tremendously. I'm sure Senator McCain and I did many of the same things when one of our constituents, one of our families lost someone in Afghanistan or Iraq, or someone was injured. Many times we had the opportunity to go and meet with those families one-on-one, and it was always a tremendous experience to visit with those American families at a time of tragic loss. And now you recognize all that they sacrificed. These families are going to be having questions about, what happened? What did America do? What's America done in the last 4 or 5 years that we paid this tremendous sacrifice? Our loved ones may have died in Iraq or in Afghanistan, and now the Al-Qaeda flag is flying over that same territory. What's gone wrong? What mistakes? What happened here?
Yeah, and it's a terrible situation, and I don't see us doing anything, especially when John Kerry goes around and talks about how we support the Iraqis, but we support them without support. Basically, that's what he's saying.
That's exactly right. We walked away from Iraq, 4.5 years ago when the president said, he didn't say mission accomplished, but it was pretty much exactly the same thing when he walked away and failed to negotiate a status of forces agreement in Iraq, meaning basically, hey, you're on your own. We're not going to be there to support you. We didn't do that after World War II. We didn't do that after Korea. After a country has gone through this kind of a turmoil, they're not going to transition overnight. They need the support of an international coalition to help stabilize and rebuild the country. We didn't do that.
All right, there's a story breaking. I'm sure you're aware of it by now in the Washington Post. Bob Gates, Robert Gates, defense secretary, former defense secretary, who worked for every president since Richard Nixon, with the exception of Bill Clinton, writing his memoir called Duty, Memoirs of a Secretary at War. And he really blasts Barack Obama, and it's really frightening what he writes. He writes that by early 2010, he had concluded that the president, quote, doesn't believe in his own strategy, doesn't consider the war to be his. For him, it's all about getting out. And went further and saying that he asserted that Obama had more doubts about the course he had charted in Afghanistan. The president was, quote, skeptical, if not outright convinced, that his strategy would fail. What kind of president invokes a strategy that he believes has no chance?
I mean, that's unbelievable. And obviously, Bill Gates is talking from one who would know, having served as president, served him very, very loyally, but not having the faith or the confidence in your commander-in-chief is absolutely frightening. And being in a position where you're Secretary of Defense and you are sending your men and women into harm's way, and you've got a commander-in-chief that may not believe in the strategy. We know that he didn't believe in President Bush's strategy in terms of fighting the war on terror, fighting in Al-Qaeda, in places like Egypt, Yemen, Libya, and those types of things. But now to recognize that he didn't, have confidence in his own strategy in Afghanistan and Iraq, that's frightening.
I want you to hear, we're talking to former Congressman Pete Hoekstra here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Earlier I had Rand Paul on. And I played a soundbite for him, Peter King. And, of course, Rand Paul is just about to start a class action suit against the NSA He said anyone with a cell phone will be able to sign on to that suit. You know that he is dead set against what the NSA is doing. Peter King is completely on the other side. And here's what Peter King said about Rand Paul specifically on Fox News the other day. Cut 11.
People like Rand Paul are putting American lives at risk. That if we listen to Rand Paul and follow his policies, Americans could die, because the NSA has stopped attacks against the United States. Right here in New York, the Zazi attempted subway attack in 2009 with liquid explosives was stopped primarily by the NSA. If Rand Paul had been around and we listened to him, hundreds of New Yorkers would be dead today. That would be on his conscience. Or maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe it wouldn't bother him. I don't know. The fact is he has to realize there's an impact from what he says. If we follow his policies, it's going to lead to the death of Americans.
Now, just as a by the way, the thing that struck me about Paul's answer is that he basically didn't respond directly to King, didn't raise his voice, didn't. You would never know that someone had just said those things about him in his answer to me. But basically, he stuck to his guns of being against NSA and said that some people, and I guess he was referring to Peter King, are afraid of things and are willing to sacrifice our liberties for them. I mean, I know which side you fit into, but did King go over the line in the things he said about Paul?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to do here is we need to stop making this personal. Rand Paul has a point of view. He's now bringing this class action suit. That's his right. But Peter King's a good friend of mine. We were classmates. We served on the Intelligence Committee together. But I'd argue, don't make this about Rand Paul. Make this about the program. There's been no evidence at all that says that the NSA has infringed on American civil liberties, that they've crossed that line. This program was done with the full knowledge of Congress, of the president, the executive branch, and the courts. I believe that ultimately this class action lawsuit will fail and that the program will be validated as being absolutely essential, as part of the package that keeps America safe and does not infringe on American civil liberties. But don't make this personal. This is not personal. This is about a technical capability, and stay away from the personal attacks.
Yeah, and when it comes to the NSA, I'm all for keeping us safe. I'm all for doing everything possible, but I have a problem with an administration who, first of all, lies about what they're doing. I mean, they told us, I believe, oh, don't worry, nobody's listening, nobody's watching, you're all safe, and I don't think that's the case necessarily. But having said that, it would be one thing if there was consistency. It would be one thing if we had an administration that didn't dismantle the CIA interrogation unit. It would be one thing if we had an administration that didn't say, it's not who we are to stick a terrorist head underwater to save Americans' lives. If we think that this guy knows where the next attack is going to be, we won't do that. But at the same time, hey, we're going to have a record of every cell phone call you make. I cannot reconcile those two points of view.
I was going to say the one I can't reconcile, Steve, is the one that says we're not going to interrogate terrorists. We're not going to hold them in Gitmo anymore, where they got better treatment than they get anywhere else. But I'm really, really comfortable, upping drone attacks where, there is no detention, there is no interrogation.
Right.
But I'll tell you, there is a Hellfire missile targeted on you, and when it hits in your campfire because someone somewhere else has decided that you're a bad guy, you're very, very dead.
And your family. And your family. Now, look, I'm not crying for terrorists. Get me wrong. But I think you and I both agree, we're pointing these things out to show the wide latitude that this administration takes, how on one hand, this isn't who we are, but on the other hand, boom.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, one thing for President Bush, he was very consistent. He said, I'll do drone attacks, I'll do interrogations, I'll do what's necessary to keep America safe. And I believe he intended to do that fully within the framework of the American law, where you've got this administration, they're parsing things that just don't make any sense.
Yeah.
You're right. You and I are in a total agreement on that.
There you go. I knew we would be. Listen, always a pleasure, Congressman. We'll talk to you very soon. Belated Happy New Year to you.
Hey, same to you and all your listeners. Hey, appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Congressman Pete Hoekstra, former congressman from Michigan. Also, of course, former head of the House Intelligence Committee here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Okay, when we come back, I have to decide if I'm going to go Jeopardy or Dennis Rodman. Jeopardy or Dennis Rodman. Maybe we'll try to squeeze both. But you're going to hear some interesting sound that you haven't heard yet today, right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.